Okay, I made it at my mama house. Grown man things now. Different walk with the mission
There
at
we
the
go.
same now. Lay it down. Now I lay down
All
in
right,
my grave.
cool.
I know I'm
So
red, but it's
tonight,
just
who
too
we
much of
have
a
with us?
snake in
We
the
have
vein.
Pastor
So I can
Ricky,
walk through the valley
we
of the
have
shadow of
Minister
death.
Janine, and we have Deanna McCall, and we are all on here tonight as the young adults of the church, just representing a few. Basically, here tonight to talk about faith and understanding God, and also to talk about how we came to the decision on our own to even start believing in God on our own. Most of you might know, and some of you might not know, but we're all preachers' kids, and usually preachers' kids get a bad rap, but that's neither here nor there. But with that being said, a lot of times people think that we automatically come into the world, knowing the word, and just shouting as out the womb. That's not true. We had to make that decision on our own. But tonight we have a completely open discussion. We definitely open it up with, if you have any questions tonight, go ahead and post those in the comments. We'll try to answer as many as we can. If we can't do it tonight, and if you guys like what we're doing, we'll try to do a part 2 next. So as we get started, here's the thing. So we already know that we have a real crazy thing that's going on right now with the coronavirus. And see, for our generation, at least the millennials, we definitely have lived through 9/11. We've lived through the sniper attacks, especially if you were here in Maryland. We've lived through the economic collapse. We've lived through Hurricane Katrina. We've even lived through this bad presidency of number 45. But for our younger kids, this is a lot that they're trying to handle right now, especially with the coronavirus that's going on. So, question on the floor. Well, before we get to the question on the floor, I want you to know what I read on Facebook today. One of our members shared that her 9-year-old granddaughter actually was found crying the other day. And one of the things that the young lady mentioned was that she's having a really hard time with the coronavirus and just her life not being normal anymore. So the question on the floor would be, how would you recommend for the younger kids to really cope with this new normal? We've been through a few new normals in our own life, but what would you give to them to be able to say or to do or to make it better? That's open to anybody.
Okay, I thought Anna was going to jump in. Hi, everybody. Well, Anna, did you want to go first since you deal with middle schoolers for your everyday?
I would. Okay, I will. What I would say is just really try to stick to a routine, try and find normalcy or try to create normalcy in the midst of your new normal. I don't know how you guys are doing school right now. I know at my school, our girls are actually in virtual classrooms. And so during the school day, their day is pretty much planned out. But after that, just really helping them to figure out different ways for them to disconnect and also feel connected to family, friends in different ways using the technology while also just staying grounded. Being as though that we're quarantined to our home. So I would just really try and find things that make you feel like yourself and continue to implement them and stay connected to your friends and families and peers.
Yeah, I think that, many of you all know, and for those who don't know, that I'm a therapist by trade. So I work with children and families, and for the few that I have that are currently trying to acquiesce or get adjusted to this, I echo what Deanna was saying in regards to trying to, one, identify a pattern, a routine to help them get adjusted to this new normal. But I think also kind of giving voice to the fact that this is weird, that, it is going to take some time, that their feelings are valid. Would be a good starting point for them to understand that it's not just them who are struggling to figure out how to make sense of what this is. This is unprecedented. We have not lived through something like this. And I could only imagine what this would have been like pre social media era. Like this really would have been a lockdown. So I think one, normalizing the reality that we're all kind of trying to figure this thing out. And then two, not just for young people, but even for, our seasoned folks, having a routine, especially if you're not working, with everything being at home. I've also suggested like carving out an identified workspace so that when you're in school per se or at work versus when to shut down and then have family or quality time. This is really going to be what separates the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And so those who plan effectively will arise victorious. So,
okay. So Pastor Ricky,
Yeah.
what about you? You have a 6-year-old at your house.
Yes, and he's attending Mr. Ricky's COVID camp. Yes, I agree with everything that Pastor Janine and Minister Deanna said also about keeping a routine. For Tristan's camp, what we did was I asked him, okay, what do you do on Mondays? What do you do on Tuesdays? And I try to set up his routine to follow what he does for a regular school day. So, for example, today's Wednesday, that's his media day. So today he was doing typing. Tomorrow is his music day. So he's going to learn some more about James Brown and the Jackson 5. So yes, you do have to keep a routine. And also, the other thing I say is this: get them out of the house. Like if you can take a walk around your neighborhood, try to do that. If you can do something to just break up being in the house all the time, do that. And definitely, as everyone already said, try to use technology. Because when I asked Tristan today, I said, do you miss school? Do you miss your friends? He said, yes, I do miss them. So we're trying to set up a Zoom for him to see his friends because that's all he wants to do. He just wants to see his friends, just to know that everyone is okay.
Right. Question. So this is one of the questions also that we have is, how do you encourage young people or just people in general to just even keep the faith during this time? Like you feel like you're praying, but then you're like, but could it happen to me?
Go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, I figured you're gonna do it. So how do we keep our faith this time? That's a difficult question. I mean, but the thing is, at least for me, I can tell what I try to do and what I try to implement at the house is that, yes, this is a crazy time. Yes, this is a perilous time. But 2 weeks ago, Dr. K said it perfectly when she was having her discussion. She said, it's a different storm, but we have the same God. Different storm, same God. So yes, this is unprecedented. No, I've never lived through a pandemic. I don't think any of us have. But it's like, do you remember the times that God has got you out when you didn't think there was a way out? Do you remember how God has came through for you? And it's like, you want to hold on to that. God's credit should be good with, I would think his credit should be good with all of us. So it's like, God has protected us. So even though, yes, crazy, even though we're going to the stores wearing gloves and wearing gas masks now, still remember that God has kept us and try to hold on to that. And I mean, that's the best suggestion I can have. Just remember, if he, as the song says, if he did it before, he can do it again. If he saved us before, he can save us again. All right, now your turn, Pastor.
Yeah. And to that, I think also because again, I'm couching it from the lens of like our younger ones. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I kind of think about it from the standpoint of when you've gone through something hellish, it makes going through something of equal kind of magnitude a little bit more easier to deal with. And so when I think about young people, I think about, okay, if you remember that relationship that you were head over heels in love with that, that young woman or that young man, and you thought you could never get over it and you survived that. Or you think about the loss of friendships where it hurt really bad, or you were bullying, or you were bullied, or you were outcasted and you made it through that. I think part of what's going to help us get through that is helping to, connect the fact that, like Pastor Ricky was saying, you were triumphant in these other circumstances, that God saw you through that. And I think if we make it practical in the sense that God is not just something or someone that you experience on Sunday mornings, but it's the everyday. It's how did you get through that last semester? How did you get through that coursework? How did you get through that crazy teacher? How did you get through dealing with your mom or your dad tripping? How did you get through all of that? And that's that same kind of skill that's going to get you through this. So faith doesn't have to feel good for it to be applicable. Like faith still works even when you don't feel like it is, you know. It is still continuing to kind of put one foot in front of the other and choosing to believe that it won't always be like this. Like that's really what faith is, making the conscientious choice to say, you know what, it sucks right now. This is really crappy, but it can't always be like this. It won't always be like this. And even if it does, then I can always find a silver lining somewhere around the corner, somewhere, you know.
So wait, before I move to the next question, Deanna, did you have anything?
I agree with everything that was said.
Okay. So we do have a question on the floor, and it is, how much should you actually tell your kids about all the different things that are going on right now, especially with them going back and forth with you go for 250 people to 10 people to you can't go outside to you now you have to be inside. Like, what do you do? How much do you actually share with them?
But listen, I could keep going. But before, you know, I don't want it, you know, because of course my lens is coming directly from best practices clinically. So I will reserve mine to the parent. You know, let's hear from the parent perspective before I add mine in, or even the professional who's working with middle schoolers every day.
All right.
From a parent perspective, I guess, he was aware of the virus before he came home, and before we actually had to sit down with him, he was aware of why he was coming home. I guess his school did a good job of letting him know. But for him, I try and I let him know that, okay, there's certain things we cannot do. And of course, that's hard for a 60-year-old to understand why I can't go to Sky Zone, why I can't, you know, go to the party. It's hard for him to get that. But when you keep on trying to reiterate that, buddy, we're just trying to keep you safe, and you try to find other alternatives, at least around the house, that can try to take his attention away from what he really wants to do,
Right.
then that kind of helps as well. But the thing that I definitely do not share with him is the death toll, because I think that would freak him out more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, tell them enough. I mean, and I don't want to sound like I'm being shady with this. You tell them enough so they're aware, but you don't need to give them the end of the world analysis about it. You don't need to give them the big, you know, press conferences to say, hey, you know, these people don't have medicine. You know, he just needs to know what he needs to know, which is, we're trying to keep you safe. You can't touch everything, but we're going to do as best we can around the house. We're going to play as much as we can around the house to keep you occupied.
Okay.
And to piggyback off of what Pastor Ricky just said, you really should tailor your messaging to meet the age and the maturity, and because you know your kids, you know the people that you're working with. I know one of the things that we did do is we really made sure to send home a lot of language homes to our parents, in addition to like academic resources, but even social and emotional resources that parents would be able to have those conversations with the parents and the kids, helping them to understand what this is, and then even providing them with other resources for them to like express themselves using the technology, but then even like different exercises or things that just really align with what's very important to students today. And so I think that you just really need to know your child, because of course, or your children, because the conversation that you would have with a 6-year-old would look completely different from a middle schooler. And then also you have to take into consideration the technology that the youth have. Do they have an iPhone? Do they have an Android? Because within that, they have access to the internet. And I feel like if you create a space where you can have those open and honest conversations, it's very invaluable, because what I do know is that if you don't create a space for these conversations to be had, the questioning does not stop, but you will figure it out on your own. And oftentimes you may not find the best information on how to navigate that. So just really creating that open door policy and that two-way communication.
I agree. Yep. I ain't got to say nothing else. I agree.
Right, I agree too. So just to basically summarize it, just of course make sure that we, like as parents, they're telling their kids the truth but
Yes.
their level, depending on the age of the child. They
Yeah.
don't always have to go into the doomsday like we discussed before, but at least enough so the child is not going out here ignorant and then believing everything that everybody else is saying. But at the same time, still keeping themselves safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move up a little bit. And I want to apologize, y'all. This is live, and I have a dog and he's kind of doing some things right now. So if you can hear it, I'm sorry. So the next thing will be, let's talk about our seniors. Now we can all think about on our senior year, prom, graduation, everything like that. But our seniors right now are in a straight dilemma that I don't think anybody has ever experienced before. Right now, they're in the midst of possibly not having a prom nor a graduation. Like, how can we give the spiritual aspect of this as well as the practical aspect of this so that they can really understand, like, this isn't God trying to like bring down the wrath, trying to destroy their lives, but this is just something of the world that unfortunately all of us are coping with right
now. Wow. Okay. Yes. I think you kind of started the conversation off properly, Erika, with saying it like that. This is hard for seniors because at this age, the way a senior, the way that age range perceives and understands themselves in relation to the world is very complicated, to say the least. And so trying to make that, coupled with the fact that this generation is very different than how we came up. So their access to social media and things like that gives them an understanding or an impression that's a lot different or complicated than what we had to deal with. Right. So you want not to be dismissive because I have the luxury of looking back at what that time was. And so, you know, I'm choosing my words carefully because I know how important this is, you know, with prom and then graduation and wanting to, you know, and with the added kind of ways in which we now stunt or show off or, you know, put our accomplishments out there and to have that taken away. So, you know, in short, I would say the first thing is just, again, connecting with the fact that this does kind of suck, that this is not the way you wanted to see your 2020 senior year coming to a close. Like you just didn't want that, you know, and there's no other way to kind of say it other than it does stink. It does suck. I will leave it to you all in terms of like the ways we can work around that, like the creative ways IG is doing all of these live kind of parties and things to still kind of create the ambiance of such. But I will say, from a spiritual standpoint, while it wasn't necessarily like this, there are people who had proms that did not go the way they expected. They had graduations that did not go as expected. They had disappointments. And so while this is a different kind of disappointment is not new under the sun. And we serve a God who's a redeemer. And so what I have learned in how long have we been out of high school? 18 plus years that, 20 years yeah, I know, right? That we've been out, is that he can redeem. Right. And what I can say is that what this coronavirus, this quarantine situation is teaching our young people right now is that you don't put all your eggs in one basket concerning one moment in time. Because life can change at the drop of a dime. And if you're to take anything from what this experience is teaching us, is that you've got to figure out how to make the most of what you've got when you got it. And you don't put all your hope in one thing. Be upset because you are entitled to that. But know that this is not the end all and the be all of all the joys, the happiness, and the experiences that our God desires to give you in spite of this moment in time. So
right, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Like I had to tell one of my girls who's a senior, and I was just like, there's something that you said too. It's just like, you have the right to be mad right now. You have every right to be upset because this was your time. Sorry about Bentley, but this was your time. So yeah, that was good. Hey parents, if you have any seniors with you right now, have them to drop a comment. Let us know how they're feeling. I saw a few people that were saying that they were very disappointed about their senior year and having a really hard time coping with it. But if you have any seniors, let us know how they're feeling so we can talk about that too, hopefully when it comes back. So, as we continue on, we touched on faith a little bit earlier, but I feel like we can go a little deeper in that because, as you know, especially with our generation and different things like that, and not even just our generation, but all of us have really difficult times with the whole faith aspect and really learning how to choose God and understanding God, if that makes sense. So I want to take us to another route. Let's go a little deep. Let's put some theology on this bad boy and some practicality too. So I had the privilege of talking with a teenager last week, I believe it was, and we got on a discussion about God and faith. And they told me this. They said, I'm kind of struggling with my faith because I'm not sure if I have the same values of Christianity. They also continue to say, I still believe in God, but the one I believe in loves everyone, no matter what. And social media and other people say certain people won't be accepted. So I don't know if the God I believe in exists. I don't know if you need me to repeat that. Do you need me to repeat that? Or you guys got it? So their whole thing is, the God that they believe in is not the same God that they hear about, and they're not sure if their God exists. How would you break this down to them? Play some Jeopardy music. Give me some time.
Right. Go ahead, AKI Pastor.
That's a good one.
How do we break down to them about, they're saying that social media is saying that certain people won't be accepted?
Yeah, so I guess I can break it down a little bit more too, and just be like, we're in a time now where some Christians believe in gay marriage, some Christians don't. Some Christians believe that if you commit suicide, you're not going to heaven. Some Christians don't. So like, it's almost like it's this whole thing, but the God that we believe in accepts us all.
Yeah, I think I'm still hung up on what you were saying about, what is said on social media and what is God really asked for. And for that, you got to really go to the source. What does God say? What does God want? And, in the Bible, when you look at what Jesus did, Jesus ran into trouble because Jesus accepted everyone. He ate with the sinner. He ate with the people that were cast out. He ate with the people that.
Repeat that again. What did he do?
He ate with the sinner. He ate with those who are cast out. He ate with those who social media would have said at the time that they don't deserve God's love or don't deserve God's mercy. He dined with those people. He invited those people into his inner circle. He invited people that were traitors of their time. He invited people that were sinners of their time. People that have terrible reputations. He invited them in. I mean, so you got to look at what Jesus did. Now, of course, Jesus invites everyone in. It doesn't mean that we stay where we are, because you can't come in God's presence and stay where you are. So there has to be a transformation whenever you get with Jesus. So whatever that needs to be for that person, I'll let you work that out. But either way, God is welcoming and opening to everybody. God loves everyone regardless. He accepts everyone regardless. And the thing is this, when we get into a relationship with God, that's when the change happens. Because if you think about like a regular relationship one-on-one, for example, I love my wife and my wife loves me. She loves me unconditionally. However, for this relationship to work, there are certain things I had to change to allow this relationship to grow in the way that it needed to. So it's the same thing with God. If I'm in a relationship with God, there's certain things in me that may need to change. But the thing about God is never overbearing. God is never badgering. God is never going to hit you upside the head. God is going to love you to change him. He's going to give you so much love that you're going to feel like I have no choice but to do the best I can to show this God that I'm loved by him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I also would add that, especially from the lens of hearing it from different people or social media, I would caution them to do kind of like we do in real life. Like, um, I'm not going to go off of what someone else has to say about, you, Erica, or, Pastor Ricky or Anna, if they don't like you. Like, let me learn of you myself to qualify what is or is not something that is palatable for me. And so with that, I would say that the problem with social media, um, and I won't even relegate it to social media. The problem is that, um, we have to be cognizant or aware of the fact that at any given moment, how someone is presenting God can be in a light that is contingent upon a number of different things. One, their stage of relationship with God, and then also their personal experience. And some experiences taint and project the improper image of God, and some are directly reflective of a more intimate interaction and relationship with God, which is going to give way to a greater level of understanding and insight concerning what the heart of God truly is. And so with that, I would say, allow your question to serve you to keep seeking. One of the things that young people, we take it for granted in our youth, and we just think that having a relationship with God is something that is for your latter years.
Mhm.
And it's not.
Mhm.
And so this is the time to start having questions and considering the source. I don't know that I would be taking what everybody is saying off of social media if I don't know them personally, and I don't know to what extent that what they're saying can be proved as true concerning God. Not everybody who's presenting God has a real understanding of who he is and how he does what he does. And so at the very least, I would say that the fact that you're even questioning or wondering is, it seems like to me, is the Holy Spirit's way of inviting you to go deeper. So, don't just stop there, keep reading, figuring out how you can get your Bible app and reading in a version that makes sense to you, reading different daily plans, talking with mentors or other people that you trust regarding in this Christian walk, to have these honest conversations. But don't stop at the question itself, and don't allow someone else's presentation of God to dissuade your engagement. God is not responsible for how someone has misrepresented him.
Right.
And so he's not. So, but what he will do is relentlessly pursue us when he has called you and he has a purpose for your life. And so I would say that the inquiry, the questioning is evidence to that young baby that God has something more for them, and he desires for them to really seek him and find out who he is to them personally.
So that's something that we should really start telling to people that had that question about God, that really it could be an invite from him to get them to become more in a relationship and get to find out more about him on their own.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say, because my takers, that, shameless plug, Takers Bible Study, when you come out, one of the things that we were talking about before this whole debacle was I gave them the acronym GTS, which is, Google that scripture. And so many times we make it so complicated. So if you have a question about how God feels about a thing, go straight to Google and say scriptures about X, Y, and Z, and figure out what the Bible is saying about the very issue that you're having. Let that be a starting point. So GTS, every time you got a question, just GTS it. You ain't got to be a Bible scholar, but that's a starting point to begin to open the doors to figuring out what God desires to minister to you in that moment.
That's good. You guys have anything else to add?
Janine said it, but I definitely want to hit on it so much when she was talking about finding a Bible interpretation that you can understand. Yes, King James Version. Y'all don't speak Old English. Y'all ain't from the 17th or 16th century. Get a version you can understand, so that way, because that's the problem. That's why people don't read the Bible. Some people don't read the Bible because they don't understand what's being said. Get a version that you can understand. I highly recommend the New Living Translation, Message version. I mean, there's all kinds. Get one where you clearly understand what's being said, and that way you can get to learn about God from yourself and not through what social media or certain internet pastors are saying.
Right.
And one last thing, in addition to everything that was said, definitely pull on people like young adults or people that you have a relationship with to really vet out what you're feeling so that they can really help lend some insight and give you different recommendations on how you can consult the text or even just vet out what's going on in your head to just bring forth that clarity.
So this is another question that has been, and it kind of piggybacks to what we just discussed. But the question on the floor was, do I have to go to church to build a strong relationship with God? You know, we hear that all the time. God knows my heart. I'm going home. I don't need to be in church. Y'all know y'all heard it. So is it true? Do you have to go to church to build a relationship with God?
I would say before I would even get to that question, you know, I would put it back on the person and say, do you feel like where you're going has value?
Break it down.
You know, many times when you're asking that question, it is because on some level you are feeling like you're not getting a need met. And so if that is something that is, if you feel like there's something missing, then yes, put it in the comments now so that we can begin to address that for our youth and young adults, because there has to be value in the thing. Simply going to church just to go to church is not going to be the answer. But you know, it helps to foster a relationship because God works well or works best through his people. And how best will you know what he is teaching you if you are in isolation? So coming to church has its value. Of course, you know, we bring in the biblical kind of connotations or the components where scripture says, forsake not the assembling of the saints. So that's the scriptural one. But on a very practical level, you would want to ask yourself, why would you not want to be in an environment with like-minded people all on the pursuit of developing and growing themselves? And if you're questioning why it's relevant, the bigger question is it not feeding you? What is missing? Why does it not feel valuable? And if it doesn't feel valuable, why not? Because the answer isn't to just withdraw, it's to identify and maybe see whether or not there's something else somewhere else for you.
Yeah. I would Janine just gave pure gospel right there. So I completely agree. And I think the other thing that with coming to church, can you learn about God outside of the church? Yes. I mean, remember, church is a building. I mean, sorry, what we sometimes call church is just a building. Church is people. You know, so church is really supposed to be built on relationship. When you look at, you know, God is in Trinity. God is in relationship with God's self. You know, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. That's the Trinity. Right. So everything that God does, God tries to do in relationship. So that is how God moves, is through the relationship of people you have in church. Because how do I learn? I learn by being in a relationship with other people. I learn things from listening to you, Erika, listening to Deanna, listening to Janine, listening to Dr. K. You learn things by being in a relationship. On top of that, with being in a relationship with other believers, they're able to help you carry on when you can't. And I think that's a thing that we miss sometimes, is that there are times where my faith may fall and I need someone who's going to lift me up because I don't have, you know, enough right now. I'm getting beat. Life is kicking my behind so much. It's great to know I can reach out to somebody else who prays to the same God that I do, who's going to help to uplift me. So I think that's that. But I think the other thing to look at it too is that how God is so much reflected within the body, because there are certain things about God that we don't understand until we see it through other people.
Come on.
And this is one thing that I did back when I was Yab's Bible study teacher, is that we don't understand grace, God's grace, until we are actually in a relationship with somebody else. Yeah. And God's grace is this: can I look at you? Can I know you? Know everything that's happening in your life, know all the sins, all the dirt you've been through, and still look at you with nothing but love, and still see the best in you. That's God's grace. And we don't really know that until we see somebody else who can do that with us. So until you have a friend, and I recommend it to my class, everybody should have a grace. Somebody who knows you, knows the dirt, knows the not dressed up Sunday version of you, who can still look at you and still see the best in you and still want to uplift you. and still encourage you to do something better. That's one of the beauties of a church. So can you learn about God on your own? Absolutely. You should learn about God on your own. But do you really get the full essence of what God wants to instill in you by yourself? I would have to say no. You have to, it's done through relationship.
Yeah. Right. That's good.
People don't always factor in the relationship part. They just think as long as they can worship God or start reading the Bible that they don't need the church, but they forget that whole aspect. Like kind of similar. I hope I'm going down the right way, but kind of when Pastor K was doing the sermon on invisible war, we're constantly in an invisible war, but we always going, like piggybacking off of what you said, like we always need that backup and that support to help us to get through that. We need the people to lift our arms when our arms get tired, and people miss that piece.
Yeah, the Aaron and the her to hold you up.
Yeah, we need you when stuff start getting a little shaky. We need people holding up arms, but they don't always understand that piece.
And I also think that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I think also this whole thing, I think is really shifting us and our mindset. And it comes to a point where what I'm hoping and what I'm believing that is being realigned through this whole experience is the way we approach just some necessaries that just have to be done because they just have to be done, regardless of how you feel about. I don't know at what point it shifted where it became that because you don't feel like it, that's justification for you not to follow through. That's many times that's what I'm saying to my young people when they talk about how they hate school. And I'm like, that's great. You can hate it all you want, but you need to do it. Like the feeling alone is not enough to alleviate or eliminate the responsibility of you accomplishing the task. And so coming to church, I think when it comes to things relating to God or spirituality, we approach it as if, there's some things, yes, you always have a choice, but I think the mindset that there are just some bottom line, some core things that just have to be because they're a part of building a foundation that we just need to get into our mind that it just has to be regardless of what it feels like. You don't have the feeling alone is not enough to excuse the due diligence that accompanies what you want, because you want the privilege, you want the access to the privilege, but then you don't want to do the due diligence. And it doesn't work that way. So I think that kind of what I'm hoping, not just our young people, because I'm going to put it on them, because, I do say young fools become old fools unless you learn differently. And so,
somebody make that a t-shirt.
Young fools become old fools. Love it.
Yeah. And so I just think that what I hope out of all of this is that we just get it in our mind that there are just some things we have to do because they're good to be done. Like there are just some things that just need to get done because they need to get done. And your feelings, while they're real, they don't invalidate the legitimacy of you following through. So
that was good. So to kind of go in the same direction a little bit, like we talked about, do you have to go to church to have a relationship with God? Let's talk about this balancing act. So we have this balancing act of wanting to have fun, because we are a generation that loves brunch, bottomless mimosas, and good wine. So we do too. Oh, okay. The seasoned folks said they do too. But how do you balance having fun? We like a good day party. We like a good party, and balance it with also serving God and loving God. You genuinely love it. Like, what's the good balance? Is there a good balance?
Well, first of all, let me say this, and then I'm a hush. I'm gonna let y'all talk.
It's an open discussion.
Y'all give me the mic, and I'm gonna keep on. Let me say this. I will continuously say that balance is an illusion. It's never balance. Balance only comes in handy when you're dealing with objects. But when it comes to life, I think rather than making it a balancing act, I think it's more about buoyancy. And when you think about buoyancy, it becomes about competing priorities. Okay. What things you have to, making sure that you're leveled enough to keep your head afloat, to keep you above water, right? And so when we think about that, if we use it with that kind of context and that imagery, then when you think about balancing this whole concept of like wanting to have fun and then being in ministry, or, you know, living and here's the other thing, not just titled ministry, because whenever we are identifying ourselves as living epistles, as bearing the name, the insignia of Christ, then there has to be the awareness of what that means at any given moment.
Right.
And so when you think about being buoyant, I approach things, one, I always think like one day I'm gonna be famous. So like, would I be mad if this video popped up? But then the other thing is this going to, if I engage in this manner in front of these people, will this have the ability to sink me or make me rise to the top? And if you approach it like that it might help with how you make the decisions concerning what can sink you and what can help you rise to the top.
Right. That's a good one, though, especially being out, depending on who you're with, what crowd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Janine said it. Yes. I never thought of it as buoyancy, because I was going to say balancing act, but it makes absolute sense what you're saying. Is will what I do sink me? And I mean, you got to also think about your integrity. It's like, yes, I want to have fun, but will this fun put a damper on who I'm trying to be as a person, or, you know, what I'm professing to believe? You know, I should never be in a situation where somebody will look at you and be like, oh, wow, you a preacher? You a Christian? You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that it's okay if you were a preacher and you like the baby, you like Gucci or whatever. I mean, I don't know what the kids listen to nowadays, you know. So I mean, go ahead, call me old. Anyway, so it's okay if you can go to a secular concert, you know, it's fine. You know, you can have a night out with your friends, but the thing is this, is what you're doing something that will make you really ashamed of who you are, or will make them question who you are. It should never be a question of what you are. I mean, because you can have fun, yes, but you should never put on the shelf that, okay, tonight I'm gonna take my collar off, or tonight I'm gonna take this robe off. No, I'm still a child of God. I'm still gonna act like a child of God. Can I have fun with you? Yes, but I still know who I represent. You know, so, and as Janine, you know, so eloquently said, I'm not gonna do something that's gonna sink me.
And I think after a while, true friends are going to understand the change.
Yes.
But that's the key word, is the true friends will understand change. And they won't mind. Well, yeah, they won't mind as much. They're going to understand it and they're going to respect it.
And I think it also goes back. I'm sorry, Anna, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, what's the expression? People who mind don't matter, and the inverse of whatever, y'all know what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And I think to echo what Pastor Ricky had said earlier, that if you're getting to a point where it feels like there's so much conflict concerning how you're navigating your day-to-day or how you experience life and fun, you may want to consider how you're understanding your connection and relationship with God. Because as you grow in connection with him, some of the desires, now I am not talking like, you know, I'm not praying 24/7. So please hear me when I'm saying that, you know, but what I am saying is that, well, listen, but what I am saying is that college Janine is quite different than, 30-plus-year-old Janine. Okay. The things that I did high school and all through undergrad, when I knew of God and I knew he knew me, but I was not concerned about what he knew he wanted to do with me. I don't see, like, I have evolved, and that's what life in general should be about. If I take away, even just making it very practical, you do not want to be the same 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Amen. And if you're finding that you are still the same, then I would question how well your growth game really is. Right. So then when we add in relationship with God, it should then begin to look a little different too. So how I enjoy myself, the things I expose myself to, the people and the company I entertain should evolve as well, because I don't look like or do what I did back in 2000 when Cash Money was, taking over for the 99 and the
I
2000.
was already
Two
started.
thousands.
You heard me. You know, I ain't forgot the way, but I choose a better way, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I'm ready to say I don't know if I'm exposing myself or not, but this was dummy me. I wouldn't read the Bible, so I wouldn't be convicted.
But there's adults that do that though. I mean, if we want to talk about it, there's adults that don't read the Bible because they don't want to be convicted.
I wouldn't read it. I wasn't trying to be convicted.
Right.
I was pretending like if I don't know no better, I can't do
You can't hold me to it. You can't send me to jail for the law I don't know.
right. Lord, I done lost it. Where we at? No,
I think it was talking about Cash Money taking over, but I think it was somewhere else now.
For the 99.
We went back.
We went back, all right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All the way over.
But I mean, what Janine, said was absolutely, and this is an old cliche. It says if your life, if at 40 looks the same way it did at 20, that means you've wasted 20 years of your life. So I'm like, you're right. It's always got to be a forward progression, you would think. I mean, and not just because our knees can't handle it. It's like there has to be a progression, at least in mindset of, okay, that was then, I had my fun then. Now this is time for grown-up business.
Right. So y'all, we are actually coming down to the wire in our time.
Oh, okay.
6 minutes. So do we want another question or do you all have final thoughts? You want to open it up to the floor to see what they have? How you want to do it?
You're the host.
You're the host.
All right, so let's find out what they have to say. Hey guys, so we only have a few more minutes left. So do you all have any questions that you would like to ask tonight? Because if so, go ahead and drop it in the comments. If not, we'll figure out something, but we're going to keep it going. And also let us know if you want us to continue this next week or not. And send some hearts up.
Of course, the first one would be Dr. K. All these would be Dr. K.
I know, right? She's trying to make sure she don't have to do it next week.
And Sister Myra. Oh, cool. Let's all the passes.
I know
They ain't slick.
We're not doing this again.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go with one more question. Okay, so we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Preacher's kids. Did being a preacher's kid shape your relationship with God that you have now?
Which one of y'all going first?
All of us literally can answer this. So let's go. We'll all answer. Let's start. Let's do Deanna first, and let's just roll.
Oh, okay.
Right,
I would say no. Because my experience was interesting because it was just like, okay, that's my parents, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And this is me. And it wasn't until, I really came down to Howard in this area that's when I really started to work out my own soul salvation. But even when I decided to engage in it, it wasn't really from like a genuine and sincere place. It was just looking for acceptance, and with time, that's when the genuinity and the authenticity actually came. I feel like where I'm at right now in my relationship with God, I'm finally like tapping into my showing my vulnerabilities to God, creating like a real sense of intimacy, because it's just like, okay, well, yeah, he knows, but it's just like, but do you really know how much he wants you to disclose that to him so that we can work through it, so that I can really access like some of the different promises in there. And so just really developing that intimacy, because oftentimes when you think of your relationship with God, it's likened to your relationship with your earthly parent. And I didn't really have that, because my relationship with my father was just like, oh yeah, that's my dad. And that's it, And so I never really understood like the correlation. And so that was just something that I needed to create on my own.
Good one. Who wants to go next?
You want me to go? Okay. Yeah. I guess we'll go in sibling order, okay? From youngest to oldest. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that, yeah, from youngest to
I'll be
oldest.
next.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, so similar, I guess, in extension to what Anna was saying, I had to identify it wasn't until coming to Howard that I really started to identify and have my own relationship with God. I think now in my latter years, I am pulling from what I was exposed to earlier on and can see the value. But initially, in terms of developing, it was very superficial. And in a lot of ways, earlier in ministry, when I first accepted the call, there was a lot of what's it called? Misconceptions or expectations or assumptions. That's what I want to say. Assumptions regarding what it was they thought I should know and how I should function once I accepted the call. And I struggled with people kind of wanting to teach me because they assumed, because of who my dad was, that I just knew, like, I was a child. And a lot of the things, when you think about PKs, while we were always in church, true indeed, our parents were not the traditional or stereotypical type of pastor and first lady where they made, I can't speak, I don't know if this is y'all's either, Erika and Ricky, but we weren't, learning scriptures and all that other stuff. It wasn't like stringent. It wasn't, restrictions on who we were hanging out with. It wasn't tight like that, like some of the others that I had known. It was relaxed, and we were allowed to be kids, and we were allowed to be free. And there wasn't this overbearing kind of responsibility beyond just knowing, don't embarrass me, you're the first family. So it wasn't until coming here that I started to cultivate my own relationship. But it wasn't until I went through my own personal state of hell that I began to truly appreciate and learn and unlearn. So I had to go through the process of unlearning and relearning who God was and who he desired to show himself to be to me. And all of that was cultivated through the melting pot of hell that I was exposed to throughout the stages. So I guess the long roundabout answer is that it definitely laid a foundation, but in terms of solid depth, it was cultivated outside of that. And now in my latter years, I can refer back and pull and add into what I was exposed to earlier on.
Right. So I can say for myself personally, I feel like we were raised in a family where God felt like a family member. So like, it wasn't anything for my grandmothers to be on their knees praying at night or one of them to be doing their devotional in the morning. Like, it was very much a part of life. However, when it got to the church, and I was young as the church was being basically started and different things like that. So when it came to the church, I actually couldn't stand the church. I couldn't stand the church because to me, the church kept my father away. All those late nights, we didn't have him. You know what I mean? We might see him in the morning when we go to school, maybe see him for dinner, but that was a complete maybe. So to me, I didn't want any parts of the church. And especially when he passed away, I think I promised myself, I was like, when I turn 18, I'm not doing church at all. Now look at me, I'm a minister, right? But I realized also, it like kind of similar to what you were saying, Janine, it was through all the turmoil where I really found God. But I had to find it on my own. And I think Ricky can attest to this. Our parents were never the type to ever force God on us. They made that be our own decision. But I mean, like, it was one of those things, if you're out late, you're going to be in church tomorrow morning. But it was never one of those things like you have to. And I think I really appreciate that because I got to learn God and love God, how I got to learn our own relationship. I have my own personal relationship with God. And it's nothing like my parents' relationship. And I think that's the beautiful part about it. But I didn't like the church for a while. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I didn't either. Because my birthday was always missed because of church and functions. And they merged me and Anna's. You brought up, you see that? I'm triggered. They would merge our birthdays into one because they would be away on church conference. So yes, it was kind of like, I don't care about what level or where you prioritize that. It can go at the bottom of the list. Right. Because it made me have to, sacrifice my day. But go ahead.
It's the additional child too.
Yeah.
Yeah. 500 more people are the children.
Mm. It really makes you question if you're special.
Yeah.
You know, because the church is taking priority. But one thing that I can say before you go, Ricky, is that I remember when I was doing the leadership class, and I think it was Pastor Darrell when he was talking about like the priority. So under God, if you're married, of course, it's your wife and your children. Then in the church was last. I wish my parents knew about that, but see, different denominations. You know, go ahead, Pastor Ricky. Go ahead.
No, it's not different denominations because that's how I think Eric and I kind of felt. It was God, church, God again, Jesus, the church one more time, Holy Spirit,
And then us.
and Karen, and then Rick and Eric. You know, and we know that's not really what he intended, but that's what it can feel like sometimes. But yes, it's one of those where, at least for me, I used to be proud that my father was a pastor. I was proud that my father was a leader, but having to go to the church Monday through pretty much Saturday evening really sucked. If I'm gonna be frank about it, I mean, you know, especially, you know, when your parents are building a church, they did everything. So it's like, you know, he was the one that was typing up the bulletin. He was the one that was going to Office Depot to print them up. So you know, you kind of get tired of always, you know, being in it. So, I mean, for us, I will say that, you know, definitely that even though we were always involved, they never really forced. They helped to cultivate the relationship, but they never forced us. They never forced a call on us. They never even said what they saw in us, anything like that. But if I can echo now to the other sister, Janine, which you said, I didn't really get my own relationship with God until I went through a storm of my own. And I mean, at least for me, my big shaking process of getting close to God was really going through Howard University. And it was at Howard where I felt like the faith of Richard Johnson III was stripped away from me. And then God was like, okay, now what are you going to believe? And then you had to I had to build up my own faith from there and build up my own relationship through that, not relying on what my father used to say or not relying on what mother was saying. It's, you know, what do you believe? You know, as he said to Peter, you know, who do you say I am? So that's what I felt like, you know, that's how I really developed my own relationship. But I mean, it was a crazy journey. It's a journey that I wouldn't trade for the world when you think about it. You know, and the thing I'll say this is that now being, you know, a father figure, you know, I now get some of the struggles that my father had to go through. Is like when you know you have something to do for church, you know you got to get this done, but yet you have a little kid that wants your time, and it kind of makes you kind of conflicted. Like, what do you do? You know, do I tell God, okay, I'm gonna just, you know, I'm giving you the best I can, but then, you know, I'm gonna not go the full time I need to go to get this sermon ready so I can spend time with my kid who doesn't quite get this, you know, who's may feel some type of way later, you know. So it's not a, as you say, not a balancing act, but it's a buoyancy act of, you know, what do I need to do to get things done. So I'll say that now as a father, I do understand what Dad did a lot better now. But of course, as a kid, you don't always get that. You know, you don't always think of it that way. So now I try to be cognizant of making sure I'm allotting enough time for not just the work I need to do, but making sure that, you know, I have a kid that doesn't grow to resent the church or resent me because I've had to miss his birthdays or miss events or, you know, not really give him the quality time that he wants. I know I went all around Grandma's barn with that, but.
No, you did that.
Yeah. I mean, it does make sense. And just hearing you talk from that perspective. So no, I don't have physical children, but, you know, I feel like you know, my clients and, you know, god babies and things like that. It definitely helps to kind of epitomize or help highlight that once you get a certain age, you're responsible for how you go after healing. And then also, it is in my older years that I am able to look back at what my parents did well and maybe not so well. And I can see them as mother and father, but then I can also see them as man and woman. And as a woman, I began to understand my mom from a woman perspective and can make the choice to heal and forgive, knowing that they did the best they could with what they had.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the thing, that's what I mean for those, those watching and young people. God is a redeemer. And so it's these moments here that redeem and make sense of what was misunderstood or unable to comprehend back then. He redeems it in that way and can restore it, and then creates a kind of viability that's stronger than what it was, because it can look back now with deeper appreciation. So yeah.
So before we close completely, this was a great discussion. It looks like we have a lot of questions about being preachers' kids. So we might have to do that next week. We got a good start on that. But first, Christian, before we say good night, we just have an announcement for this Sunday, which is Palm Sunday, and it's also Communion Sunday. We want to make sure that you all are tuned in at 10 a.m. this Sunday. We'll be right back here on Facebook Live. You can also catch us on the app, and we're going to have our virtual communion. So go out there, grab your crackers, your juice, your bread, your water, whatever you need. This is your one time you can do wine. Don't take it overboard. And we're going to have something together at home. And also, because it's Palm Sunday, go ahead and grab some of those hand towels that you got. We're going to rally it up. We're gonna, if you're a Steelers fan, get your towel. This is the one time, but we're going to have some fun with this. Thank you all so much. I think I can say this on behalf of Pastor Rick, Deanna, and Minister Janine, and PK. She says hello. We want to say thank you all so much for tuning in with us, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And make sure that you tune back. It looks like we'll probably be here next week. But you guys have an absolute good night. Have a great week, and we will see you back on Sunday. We love you guys.
Bye.
Now I lay down in my grave. I know I'm red, but it's just too much up at stake. Give me faith, so I can walk through the valley. I got my people around me, secure the bed like it's Cali. Just make it